I also own my own firm, the Mushek Law Firm. Just generally an overview of my career, how it started is I started at Arizona State. I got a bachelor's degree in business. And then after my undergrad, I just went directly to work. So I worked for an insurance company. I was basically a personal injury adjuster. And so I was the one that was denying all the claims. And I'm sure Nadine hated me. And so I did that for about 4 years, and the longer I worked, the more experience I got to litigation, handling litigated claims, and I thought, these idiots are doing what I'm trying to do too. So I applied to law school, I got in the beginning I did a part-time program, but then I switched over to full-time at Arizona Summit, and then took the bar, Arizona bar first, and my first job was at a Resident Lewis, actually, as a clerk, and then, as soon as I passed the bar exam, they promoted me to an associate, and I've been there for about 9 years. The firm now, it's about 165 lawyers nationwide. We're in 12 states actually, and so we have many offices in California. My office is in Burbank. I manage our Burbank office, and we primarily do insurance defense. So everything we do is litigation. For those that don't know, it's lawsuits basically. So we don't do anything pre-litigation. And we do personal injury, we do employment litigation, we do a lot of construction litigation, we do some workers' comp, a lot of different areas. Recently we got a lot of real estate cases. So a lot of these insurance defense firms, you're practicing a lot of different areas, and so you're always using your brain, you're always thinking, researching, learning about new industries. And so you find that Google is one of your best friends, because something I don't know about in like medicine, I'll just Google it real quick, and then when I call the doctor, I try to sound like I know what I'm talking about with all the buzzwords. So I'm actually licensed in 7 states. I took 3 bar exams. I didn't have to take 7, thankfully, but I'm done. There's no more bar exams. So almost 90% of my cases are in California, but we do some overflow in like Nevada and Colorado, and I still practice in Arizona too. And it's actually very helpful when you're licensed in multiple states, because you'll have a lawsuit in California, but then, for example, you have an entity that's in Colorado, and you can't drag that entity into the lawsuit in California. So a lot of lawyers can't do that; they'll have to refer it out. But with me, before that guy even knows what happens to him, he's already sued in Colorado, and we're suing him in a different state. So it's very helpful. And then, so I've been doing it for about 9-10 years, kind of lose track, but about 9 years. When I was working, I also, I did a LLM, which is a master's in law, and it's an insurance law. And I think probably like less than 1% of lawyers have LLMs, but for me, I was so interested in insurance law, and I think it's so applicable, it probably applies to almost every industry. So, I'm the insurance guy at our firm, so when they have questions to me, they come, with insurance questions. So we'll do a lot of coverage analysis for insurance companies, and we'll look, if there's policies, different places, we can analyze, hey, we should go after this person because they probably have this type of insurance. So it's actually very helpful. And, as Bernil was saying, throughout this entire time, even in law school, I was always involved in certain stuff. I just loved it. So I first started actually, at the Assyrian American Cultural Organization, and I started as one of the board members, and then slowly worked my way up until I became president of that organization. And then I did that for about a year, but then I ended up moving to California, so the next term somebody else took over. But then also at the same time, now I'm the vice president of the federation, so it's the organization that's putting on this convention. And I love doing it. I think in our community, it's very important that we have Assyrians that are involved in the legal profession, because a lot of my role is not just being the vice president and planning conventions. A lot of my role is reviewing contracts, drafting contracts, negotiating deals. Like I negotiated the deal with this hotel. made changes to the contract. Basically, every single one of our vendors I reviewed and approved, and a lot of times I actually drafted almost every contract except for maybe AV. We just made some edits to it. But yeah, so it's very helpful, and I think as Assyrian organizations, when we are putting forward professionals, and when they know that it's a professional that's they're negotiating with or doing these deals with, I think it carries some weight. And I think it shows a sense of power that our nation has within our community. We're powerful, in the United States and then also abroad. And I think it's very helpful when like I was in Iraq last April with Gishru, and a lot of the members are here. I think it shows a lot of power when you're bringing these professionals to other foreign countries, and they're saying, "Wow, there are Assyrians in diaspora, be like lawyers, doctors, very professional people that carry a lot of weight and have a lot of connections with the government and with businesses, and they know how to operate." And we're doing deals, big, like at my firm, I'm representing Fortune 5 companies, and when they see that, these are the people that are representing Assyrian organizations, I think it creates a sense of power, and I think that perception is very good. So I don't know, I'm kind of on time, but I'll pass the mic to Mary, and then if you guys have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Thank you, Alan, and thank you, Bernil, for my brother for that great introduction. I want to first start out by saying thank you to Assyrian advisors and also AANF. I have seen firsthand from how much effort my brother has put in, how much work it takes to put on these events, so we really appreciate it and all the work that you do for the Assyrian community. My name is Mary Chamaki. I work as a corporate transactional attorney at Wilson Sonsini Goodrich & Rosati. So I want to first start out by asking the audience a question. So let's say you're outside at the convention pool and you get to talking to someone, and as you're talking, they say, "Hey, I'm a lawyer." So what is the first thing that comes to your mind when they say that? Do you imagine it's a lawyer, then they're in a courtroom, they're arguing to a judge and jury? So go ahead and raise your hand if that's what you imagine. All right, wow. A lot of you know more about law than I do, apparently, but so typically, most people, what they imagine, and oftentimes I believe this is the case because of what the media portrays. So if you've taken a look at the O.J. Simpson trial, or a lot of these popular shows like Law and Order, or movies that are out there like My Cousin Vinny, they oftentimes portray lawyers as being in a courtroom and arguing before a judge and jury. What a lot of people don't end up knowing, and this is actually the case even for law students themselves, because law school is very focused on litigation, very litigation heavy, but oftentimes they don't know that there's an entirely different type of law, and that's called transactional law, and that's what I do, and more specifically, I practice corporate transactional law. So I'll get into that, what that entails specifically a little bit later, but essentially, just very high level, very broad generalization, there are two different types of law and two types of law that you can go into out of law school. So one kind is called litigation, and that's what you would typically imagine, a lawyer in a courtroom. And then another type that is people are less familiar with is a transactional attorney. So as part of my job, I've never stepped into a courtroom. I never plan on stepping into a courtroom, and I'm very happy with that. So basically, while I was personally at law school, and to go into a brief background on my personal background, I went to Santa Clara University, which is a small Jesuit university over in the Bay Area, and I studied political science and communications there. And then immediately after that, I went to UC Hastings, which is located in San Francisco, to complete my law school degree. And while I was in law school, you're kind of in this time where you're figuring out what it is that you want to do. And while I was figuring that out, I reached out to a lot of attorneys, a lot of specific corporate attorneys. I worked at Fenwick & West, which is a very big law firm in the Bay Area and all around the world. They specifically work with large technology companies. While I was working at Fenwick & West, I had the opportunity to work very closely with a lot of these corporate attorneys, and I asked them out to lunch and coffee and really pick their brains about what they were doing. And one thing I want to note to all of you who are, at the beginning stages of your career, I really encourage you to take the time out and ask people to lunches and coffees. And I know sometimes that can be really intimidating. You're looking at these, whatever it is, CEOs or partners at law firms, and you're like, oh my gosh, how can I reach out to this person? But you'll be so surprised how often people are ready and willing to talk to you. And now that I'm on the other side of it and I'm at this law firm, I'm always ready and willing to talk to people, take them out to lunch, schedule a phone call to do that. So I really encourage people, because you don't want to spend 20 years in a career that you don't know what it is, so it's always better to figure that out in advance. So basically I figured out and learned about corporate law, and specifically corporate law at a big law firm, and I really wanted to pursue that. Now, the only problem with doing that is that it's extremely hard to get one of these big law corporate positions. They're very lucrative, they're very prestigious, and there's really only two main ways to get one of these big law positions. So the first way is you have to have gotten into and attended a top 14 law school, and so if you've done that, you're kind of a shoo-in into one of these positions. And then the second way you can do that is by getting really, really good grades while you're at law school, and you have to score within pretty much the 10 to 15% of your class. So knowing that I wanted to do this, I stuck my head down, all during law school. I was studying like 14 hours a day, just really disciplined. I sacrificed, I didn't go out anywhere, I didn't see friends, I didn't see family, and I really just focused 14 hours a day, like every day studying. And very fortunately, I got the grades that I needed, and I qualified, and I ended up getting a big law position at Wilson Sonsini, Goodrich & Rosati. So after graduation, I ended up going directly to Wilson Sonsini, and I've been there for about 6 years now, where I practice corporate and securities law. So a little bit of background on Wilson Sonsini. They are one of the biggest law firms both in the Bay Area and actually globally. We have offices all over the Bay Area. I believe at this point we're a little over 800 attorneys. So I'm one of the attorneys. I'm based out of the headquarters in Palo Alto. And just a brief background on Wilson Sonsini and some of their accolades. So we represent and have represented companies like Google, Apple, Zscaler, DoorDash, and we also represent very high-profile individuals. So one athlete that we represent is Steph Curry. So you may or not have heard of him, but he's from the Golden State Warriors. So I've actually been in my office and lifted my head up, and I see Steph Curry walking into the partner's office down the hall. So it's just really awesome to be in a sort of environment where I'm learning from the best and the brightest legal minds in the entire world. So a little bit about what I do, since I'm not in a courtroom and maybe some people are less familiar with what that actually entails. So the type of work that I do in my day-to-day at Wilson Sonsini. So I'm a corporate generalist, and what that means is I represent companies, and my firm represents companies, and typically they're very large, sophisticated, either technology or biotechnology companies. And we basically take the company from its very early stages, and we take it all the way through an exit. And typically what happens when a company exits, there's one of two ways in which you can exit. You can either do an IPO, which is an initial public offering, and you may have heard like, oh, this company goes IPO, so we're the primary people leading that deal when we go public. The second way a company can exit is through a merger and acquisition, and typically we have these large technology companies, they've grown enough, and they come in, they get an offer from another company, let's say like this is like hundreds of millions of dollars, sometimes billions of dollars. I've had clients come in who are like $500 million deals, and they usually get bought out by these larger public companies or private equity firms that buy them out. So those are the two types of transactions we work on. And then more specifically, so what an IPO typically entails, or what it entails for taking a company public. So typically what we do is we have all these corporate attorneys. We're the quarterbacks in the process, we're leading the process. We get into these big, large conference rooms, typically for a month, and we're in these conference rooms like day and night, and not getting much sleep. And basically, we're in the conference rooms, and we'll have the entire management team, the executive team of the company, the CEO, the CFO, the CEO, and the entire executive team will be there. We'll also have the accountants there. Typically, this is from the Big Four, so think of Deloitte, PwC, Ernst & Young, KPMG. All the accounting firms are there. And then we're essentially leading the process of filing what we call a Form S-1. It's a document that has to go on file with the government, the SEC, in order for the company to go public. So we put together this 200-page document, we file the document with the government, and at that point, essentially what happens is the company can be traded on the NASDAQ or the NYSE listing exchange. So raise your hand if you've ever bought stock. Just ever bought stock. All right. So all of these companies, if you bought Google stock, if you bought Apple stock, we're the ones who are putting together those deals that allow you to then go in and purchase that stock. So that's what we do on the IPO side. And then in terms of mergers and acquisitions, again, I work with my large technology clients. What's really been awesome about being at Wilson for about 6 years now, I've seen companies come in at their very early stages. You know, it's 2 founders, they have an idea, and I've taken them all the way, grown them all the way to when they've been bought out by a sale. And so typically what happens for this is we have these large technology companies, and one of my favorite transactions that occurred was actually during my first year. And I remember it was a Friday. So part of working at these big law firms is your schedule is incredibly unpredictable. So it was a Friday around 3 or 4 p.m. And I remember I was like, okay, I'm ready to go for the weekend, ready to get out and whatever I was planning to do at the time. And I get a call from one of the partners in my group. And he was like, Mary, we have one of our large technology clients, and they just got an offer to get bought out for over $500 million. And we actually need to sign the merger agreement by Sunday night. And why we had to do that was because their stock was, we wanted to do it before the market opened on Monday, so the client got the best price. So my weekend plans were done at that point. All of my team, my corporate team, got into a very large conference room, and we worked around the clock. We did all the due diligence. We wrote the merger agreement, and we ended up signing at a very good price that Sunday night. And so that's kind of a very brief overview of what we do in terms of our mergers and acquisitions deals. And then generally what the path entails for being a corporate attorney long term, there are really 2 overarching paths you can take. So one would be to pursue being a partner at a big law firm, and then the second kind of exit opportunity is going in-house at one of either the clients at the firm or other very large companies, so being an attorney at Google or Facebook and Salesforce and so on. So those are kind of the 2 main paths that we would take. All that being said, I think one thing that's very rewarding for me with working at my firm is, we're representing all these really awesome clients, but some of my favorite clients have been the biotechnology clients that we work on, and I've had clients that are working on curing Alzheimer's or curing cancer, and the very small part that we're able to do in that process and raise money for these companies and help them progress in their clinical trials is just incredibly rewarding, and that's part of the reason why I've stayed at my firm for the amount of time that I have. So to wrap up, I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I do want to say, I want to mention and encourage all of you who are going through the process to reach out to us at Assyrian Advisors. My brother Brunil and the entire Assyrian Advisors team has done an incredible job of putting together just a very large group of very successful professionals, and we're all ready and willing to provide you with mentorship and guidance. I have 2 awesome attorneys, Alan and Nadine, next to me, who are ready and willing to provide you with mentorship and guidance. So please reach out. We need to help the Assyrian community. And one final comment that I want to make is I think it's incredibly important for Assyrians to become very educated and very successful in their careers. And once you get to that point, please do not forget where you came from. It is incredibly important for us to, when we're now in these positions, give back to others, whether that's referring someone to a job, building up another Assyrian. I want to be able, if you come to me and you need help, I'm always ready to and willing to help you. And I think having a lot of these Assyrians who are in these positions and being successful will make our entire nation much stronger. So I encourage all of you to, number 1, get educated, number 2, be successful, and then number 3, give back. Thank you.
Tough to top, Mary, tough to top. Hi everyone, my name is Nadine Kadri. I am a trial personal injury lawyer at Pane, Shea & Boyle in West Los Angeles. I've been at the firm about 5 years now. Just my career trajectory, I started at UC Merced. I got a degree in political science. I took a year off, worked, took my LSAT. Got into Loyola Law School in Los Angeles, moved down to LA, obviously law school is 3 years, and then I took the bar in California, and I've been working at my firm ever since. I interned at that firm in law school my second year, so in between my second and third year, I was there for the summer. That fall, after that summer, I went and clerked at the DA's office, or the district attorney's office in Compton, which was really interesting. I knew I didn't want to do criminal work, but I knew I wanted to get the experience of being in a courtroom. Mary was talking about kind of what you guys see on TV. I actually do go to court, which is really fun. I love my job, it's awesome. And I get to actually do trials and speak in front of juries and do depositions. I'm constantly taking depositions, defending depositions, and I mean the last couple of years have been a little different. I haven't been to a courtroom as often because things have been virtual, but I've managed to do 2 trials these past couple of years in person, and that's been really awesome. So I was at the DA's office in Compton, and I got to do like preliminary hearings. As a law student, you can get certified and have a lawyer supervise you and actually appear on the record. And so it's a great experience even if you don't want to do criminal work. And then my last semester of law school, I went back to Pane, Boyle, and I've been there ever since. A little bit about my firm. It's one of the largest personal injury firms, I think, in California, if not maybe the nation. Brian Panish is the main partner, and he's done over 150 jury trials, and our firm is constantly in trial. We're currently representing the victim of the Alec Baldwin case. We've represented numerous different celebrities. We had some of the families from the Kobe Bryant crash, so we handled those cases. Our firm handles some pretty high-profile cases, and it's really fun to be around. So that's kind of the career trajectory that I've taken. A little bit about how personal injury law really works. I don't represent corporations. I'm often suing corporations and dealing with insurance companies. So I'm on the other side of these two for sure. I represent individuals from all walks of life, right? I represent very educated individuals and people who have had less of an education, formal. And so I have a difficult job sometimes in explaining how lawsuits work to somebody who comes from a very different background. And so my job is really to make the law simple and guide the client through that time process when it's already a very difficult time to begin with. I focus on a lot of sex abuse cases as well. That's been something that I've been very passionate about the past few years. I got to work on a trial last fall, out in Riverside. I represented a 5-year-old little girl who was molested at a gym daycare. She was molested by another boy in the daycare who was 13 years old. It was horrific. The entire molestation was on video. And the supervising attendant that was on staff that day was just not paying attention. And the boy took her to the back room and molested her for over the course of an hour. That case was litigated for over a year and 9 months, and the defense lawyers thought that that case was not worth a lot of money. I had focus grouped the case, which means you get people from the street and present the case to them, and you ask them how liable do they think the gym is for failing to supervise the kids, and how much money do they think that this little girl should be awarded for the rest of her life for the trauma that she went through, essentially. This little girl was remarkable. She was a genius, and I use that word very sparingly, but she was so mature, and the reason the abuse came to light is because she told her mom in the parking lot that day what happened. And to think about a 5-year-old little girl recognizing what happened to her and having the strength to tell her mother, is just unbelievable to me. Most sex abuse survivors sometimes don't even come out their whole life, and others come out decades later. So prior to trial, obviously we get experts involved who talk about the trauma that she's been through and how that's going to affect her life. And we deposed a lot of the corporate representatives from the gym. And prior to the trial, we received an offer for $1.5 million. During the course of trial, they offered, thank you so much, they offered $3 million right before closing arguments. And this was probably a really pivotal moment in my career. I called the mom, it was a Friday afternoon, and I said, they're offering this much money. She said, well, what do you think? And I said, I think we turn it down. I think we should keep going. And she said, okay, I 100% trust you. Even if my daughter gets $100,000 out of this and that money accrues interest up until the time she's 18, I'm happy so long as there's a public verdict out there, and there's a record holding this gym accountable. And I think I realized that, you know, the financial aspect is one thing, but for these people, it's about holding someone accountable and getting closure in their life. And that means so much that I have a role in that for someone who suffered something so tragic, that they can finally kind of, you know, take a stepping stone and move on. We ultimately ended up receiving a $13 million verdict in the case, and it was a record-breaking case. In California, I think it's the highest sex abuse verdict for a single instance of abuse. And by single instance, I mean like one time. There's other verdicts for like multiple years of abuse or things like that. But I had a really great moment this week too, because I called the defense firm that this case was against, and I was speaking to one of the lawyers, and I said, you know, tell Ed I say hi. And she said, how do you know Ed? And I said, well, I had this case with him. She goes, oh, that case? I said, yeah, that case. She said, you know what, Nadine? She said, it's interesting that, you know, I'm speaking to you because I have another sex abuse case that I'm working on. And I wrote the adjuster about your case, and I told them we should settle this case so it doesn't end up like that case. And I thought that was awesome because it means I'm helping other victims and kind of raising the bar for other victims to help them get closure. So that's some of the cases that I work on. I also work on personal injury cases of all sorts. The standard stuff, you know, auto accidents, but I also work on like products cases that are defective, premises cases where there's an unsafe condition on a property, things of that sort. The personal injury field is very different compared to like the corporate trajectory of like getting into a firm. It's really about just getting to know people and you know, being at the right place at the right time. When I was in law school, I didn't know if I wanted to do personal injury. I kind of had a preconceived notion of it, you know, the billboards, ambulance chaser, all the fun things that people call me, right? But you know, I met some people who did it, and it was great. I moved to LA. I don't think I knew many people. I didn't know anyone at my school. I definitely knew like a handful of Assyrians, but not many people at all. I definitely didn't know any lawyers in Los Angeles, that's for sure. And so I made it my mission to know as many as possible during the course of law school. And I did a lot what Mary did. I would reach out to people and just cold email them and be like, hey, can you get coffee with me? And I was overwhelmed with the amount of responses I got of people who were willing to meet with me and take the time and just tell me about what they do and how they got there. And you know, for every 10 emails I sent, maybe like a handful would respond or 3 would respond, but that's 3 more than I knew the day before, and that's kind of the path that I took. So I ultimately met enough people, and I tried almost 8 months to get an internship at this firm. And I got an email one day saying an intern had dropped and that they weren't, and they had an opening. It was April, it was supposed to start in May. And I came in, I got an interview, and I told them I wasn't turning in my key card ever again. So I've been there ever since. But I guess really the point is, even if you can't find an Assyrian lawyer who does what you do, I'm sure there's more. I feel like the last like 10 years, there's so many more Assyrian lawyers, and I love seeing it. It's awesome. But reach out to the ones that you do know, and if you can't find someone who wants to do or does the type of law that you want to do, just start searching online. I mean, the California Bar website lists everyone's contact information, right? So you can pull their email and just email them and say, hey, I saw you do this. I would love to get coffee and just pick your brain, see what your job is like. And I think it's really important to try to get as much exposure prior to going to law school as you can in the legal field, because it's a lot of work to go through law school. It's a lot of money to go to law school. It's a lot of work to take the bar. And to do all that and start at a firm and be like, I hate this. Oh my God, how am I going to do this for another 30-something, 40-something years? Is just a horrible feeling, you know? Maybe you'll go intern at a firm prior to going to law school. You can do that in college, and you realize, oh my gosh, this is not what I want to do. And that's great because you've avoided a lot of, you know, stress and time and all of that. So, you know, I think it's important to try to get as much exposure, whether that's meeting with attorneys or interning at a law firm. Doing all of that is great. You know, I thought I wanted to do a completely different type of law when I started law school. I interned at a firm, and I was like, nope, this is not for me. So that's one of the coolest things I think about law school, is that you can be doing civil work one semester, criminal work the next semester, and you have that opportunity to do that, and that's a very rare opportunity in your life. You can't switch jobs every 6 months. I mean, you can, but it's not a good look, obviously. But you can do that as a law student. You can switch your job every 6 months and get exposure to all those different types of fields. I'm also barred in Nevada. My office has been expanding their practice to Nevada. I actually just came back this morning from a work conference there. So, yeah, it's good to take multiple bars. It makes you marketable to different firms, and it expands your practice. And anytime someone sends you a case, a lot of California people get Nevada cases, and they'll send you a Nevada case and be like, handle it for me. So, it's always a good marketing tool.
I suppose this is now when we take some questions or ask the
Okay, any questions? Yes.
Thank you for really talking about your careers, and I appreciate that. I don't have a prospect of going to law school. But as a client, I'd like to ask you, how do we pick an attorney? What are the kinds of things we should look for to get an attorney, number one? Number two, once you do get your attorney, what is the best way of dealing with the attorney? What is a profile of a good client? How do you make a good client so your case becomes more successful?
I think our mics are working. Hello? Maybe not. Right here. So I think when you're shopping for a lawyer, it's very important, and a lot of people don't think about this. It's important to have chemistry with your lawyer. I mean, it's very simple, but a lot of times just call them, have conversations with them. A lot of lawyers will do, depending on the type of law it is, they'll do a free consultation. Sometimes in cases that are a little more complicated, I charge a consultation. You sometimes charge a consultation fee, but I think it's very important at the very beginning to, make sure that you guys communicate well together, and yeah.
It's working.
Is it working? Okay. Yeah, so just make sure that there's that chemistry there, that you're communicating, and then it's also important to know that you. Is it not? Is it? I don't think it's working though. Is it? Hello?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, so just make sure that you have that chemistry and communicate. Communication is very important. So a lot of this stuff you document. I ask for reports. I report to all of my clients. A lot of my clients are companies, so they'll ask me to send letters. So every 30 days, I'm sending a detailed report about where their case is going, the factual developments, what the discovery plan is, and I think the most important thing is managing costs. So as a client, I think it's really important that you manage the attorney on how much they're billing you, and have them send you a budget. Very early on, say how much will it take to litigate this case? Because a lot of times I'll talk to clients and they'll want to sue somebody over $10,000. And most of my cases, taking a case through, like Nadine does personal injury, so it's all contingency fees, so you don't worry about that stuff. But my clients, they're paying billables. So in order to take a case from a lawsuit all the way to trial, it's going to cost around $150,000. And that includes my fee, my associate's fee, paralegals, and it takes about 2.5 years to fully try a case. A year to 2.5 years typically. So the cost aspect of it is the most important thing. One of the most important things to communicate. And also the expectation of what you want to get out of the case, what you want to accomplish, what the likelihood is of accomplishing that goal in litigation.
Second question.
I can't remember what it was.
How do you become a good client? How do you listen?
Yeah, so being a good client, I mean, I've had very bad clients in the past. And so a lot of it, they say is a lot of it's client management. So I think in order to be a good client is, again, just communicate with the lawyer what your needs are, what your expectations are. And most of the issues that I run into with my clients is managing costs. And so a client will have an expectation that may be very expensive. And so I think to be a good client, it's important to understand what the expectations are and how much it'll cost to actually get there.
Any other questions?
How hard do your firms push for branding? So do your firms have a marketing budget to try to make that unique value? in like appealing to those high ticket clients that you mentioned? Like how do they have that platform and credibility to like bring in those high ticket clients?
I can definitely take that. So Wilson Sonsini, it's incredibly well known in the Bay Area. So it started out with 4 what they call named partners, but the main one, and he's still very active in the firm, is an attorney called Larry Sonsini. He had actually gone to UC Berkeley for law school, and then he had joined, decades ago to this law firm. But he made himself incredibly well known and prominent in Silicon Valley. So he's actually the one who took Google, I'm sure you've all heard of it, he took Google public in 2004. He also took Hewlett Packard public, he took Apple public, and so he was doing all of these amazing deals. Obviously at that point, Google and Apple and Hewlett Packard were starting out very early on in the very early stages, but after he had done that, he made a brand for himself, a name for himself, and so thankfully, Wilson Sonsini is very well known, not just in the Bay Area, but also globally and internationally. And so when I'm taking on clients or when we're pitching clients, it's thankfully very easy because we have a very big brand name to go off of, and that makes it very great. But typically when we're trying to pitch some of these deals, so for example, we just took DoorDash public through their IPO about a year or 2 ago, and we basically have to put together these pitch books because we're pitching against these other big law firms such as Cooley and Fenwick over in the Bay Area. We put together simply the best teams, our best partners come on, our best associates, and we have to go in and do a pitch to these clients and basically say, hey, this is what Wilson Sonsini can do for you. These are the deals that we've done. This is why we can provide you the best resources.
So thank you. That's awesome. I like that.
Any other question?
Sorry, I came a little late, so I don't know if you guys mentioned this earlier in your discussion, but I wanted to see, being so successful in your guys' career, especially being lawyers, do you guys ever think or do anything to help our students back home, given all your legal expertise and knowledge, something to either gain awareness for our people or helping them bringing, our orphan kids home or anything for Atra? If I missed it, I apologize, but I was just curious.
Yeah, I can take it. Actually, I just went to Iraq in April myself. I recommend it. I was just telling Mary, every Assyrian should go to Iraq. It's amazing. And I think prior to going to Iraq, I shared in your sentiment of thinking like, okay, going in, like, what can we do to help fix the situation? And after going there, I left, I don't know, I don't want to say it, but hopeless, to be honest with you, because there's not a real court system there. I don't know if Joe may disagree, like that feeling, sharing that feeling of hopeless in the sense of like doing anything legally, I think, there. Things get put in our favor, like the courts will rule in our favor, and then nothing gets enforced, right? So it's like, imagine like if our courts, what they issued has no merit, right? And that's really what it is in Iraq, so it's devastating to see. I think, Alan and I have kind of talked about it. I mean, it might be something that we need to go through the international courts through. But the issue is like all these documents need to be certified, translated from Arabic to English. You can start that process, and it's thousands and thousands of documents, and it's not like we need like a legal team to do this, And so it's been on my mind since I've gotten back from Iraq. Like, what can we do to do something legally and use our resources? It's going to be a lot of funding and just manpower to do that. Of course, there are other ways we can help out stuff. I'm just talking like legally. That's kind of been on my mind. I don't know, Alan, if you want to say something.
Yeah, I mean, we joke around about it because in California, a lot of stuff is form, so they'll have form complaints and form discovery. And I'm like, maybe we can find a judicial counsel form for filing a lawsuit in the United States. But I mean, she's right. A lot of the rulings, especially involving property rights, the courts will issue an award, and they're just not enforced there because there's no interest in order to enforce it. But I mean, Nadine's involved in the Syrian aid. I'm involved in the federation. We all do our part locally. We try to give a voice to our people back home. But from a legal perspective, it does become very difficult.
especially here in the home country, or in the U.S., not the home country, I'll just circle back to what I said. I think it's really building each other up. If you are in these positions, first of all, through mentorship, like come to Nadine, come to Alan, ask questions. We're willing to take the time out to tell you what we do and help you. And then on the other side, when we do have these successful Assyrians, when you are on the other side of the spectrum, we need a community that is ready and willing to help each other and build each other up and have this very large force of successful individuals who can then raise the money, do the financings, take on the work that we need as a base of successful, oftentimes wealthy individuals who will be able to do that. And the more successful people we have, the first time I write, I want to build them up. The first time I left, I want to build her up. The better our entire nation will be.
All right.
Hi guys, thank you for your talk. I'm at 2L. I just started 2 weeks ago back. So my question is for you guys. How did you navigate, because I know you guys all interned at the places you work at now. So how did you navigate finding it? Did you go to OCI? Did you apply through like summer associate programs? Because I'm doing that right now and I'm finding it really difficult. Especially Nadine, you said you didn't hear back until April. So
Yeah.
that was that anxious.
No.
Did you have an off? Like I want to hear your stories of how you navigated 2L for your summer program.
Obviously, the OCI process is really formal. So that's like a formal guarantee process you do early on in the fall, and you're guaranteed a position. In smaller, more boutique firms, like my firm, there's no formal process. Like they don't put up an ad even. They kind of just people reach out and they interview you to see if you want to get an internship. I was consistently reaching out. They had told me the internship program was full, and then somebody dropped. That's why it wasn't until April. But it can be very stressful if you don't get a job through OCI, which do not be discouraged if you do not, because literally only 3% to 6% of people get a job through OCI. The rest of the 90-something% are not getting jobs through OCI. And so, obviously there's the typical stuff in the job postings, but I've gotten every job I've gotten through just relationship building and finding somebody who does what I do and keeping in touch with them until eventually somebody popped up and they had a position for me.
I definitely agree with that. It depends a little bit on what you're interested in, what field you're going into. So, as I mentioned, for what I went into, big law, it was a little bit more structured. So, you had to get really good grades your first year. We went through the formal OCI process. It's a little bit different now because it's not as formal of an interviewing process, but you got your job through that. You did a summer associate program after 2L, and then more often than not, once you do your summer associate position, you end up getting hired at a firm. That being said, I completely agree with what Nadine's saying in terms of forming relationships, and it's so interesting. I'm even at this point, people I went to undergrad with, people I grew up playing tennis, so people I played tennis with growing up, I feel like I can reach out to them, and if I ever need a job or want some help or guidance with a legal question, I can reach out to them. So just making sure, and I've heard this all throughout my schooling, always be kind, and obviously be kind to people, but these are always people that can come into play in the future through your relationships and through your network. So it's so important to build your network. And I know I've repeated this several times, but within the Assyrian community, I think it's so important for us to be willing to help other people and to network. If I got to meet Nadine in person today, and if she ever needs something in the future, ready and willing to help her. So I think that's so important to do that, especially for us Assyrians.
For me, absolutely echo everything you're saying. Networking is so important. So when I was in law school, I was sending out emails to people that graduated from my law school and offering to do lunch or coffee, and all throughout law school, and then even after law school. But then during law school, after law school, I got really scrappy because I was getting so nervous about not finding a job. And I went to one of the high rises out in it's on Camelback and Central. It's 2 high rises and it's all law firms. And I remember I went there with just a folder full of resumes and hit every button on the elevator. And I just went in there. Yeah. And I just went in there and handed my resume and actually got a few on the spot interviews. And the funny thing with all of that is after doing everything, it turned out one of my friends actually recommended, I worked
But on that note, my building has security, so just pretend to be like a Postmates person to get your resume upstairs.
I actually tried that last summer, trying to study downtown.
Yeah.
For sure, I think it's helpful, and I think your name will get out there. You'll make some relationships, and the firm that I actually that interview with on the spot, we have cases with them all the time, so I come across that lawyer. Actually, the piece that forever white doesn't think but yeah, so it's interesting. So I mean, you do everything, but networking is definitely.
All right, we're going to go to our last question here.
Thank you so much. My name is Eddie Benjamin. I was born in Nineveh, moved to Chicago, then Chicago, Las Vegas. In Chicago, I had a case, you know. It was about a rental case. It was long. I can't go the more details. 3 lawyers and 2 people against me without attorney. I won the case. They paid me $2,000 for that. The thing is, they have a problem because I sent them a check, they returned it back to me. So they went to court, they wanted that check. I said, I'm not going to give you that check back. I told the honorable judge, if you put me in jail, I'm not going to give the check because I gave the check to them, they sent it back to me. Anyway, that was gone. In Vegas, I had a case. My wife purchased a land and she returned it. She didn't want it, so they filed a lawsuit against me, against us. I was in a service overseas for U.S. Armed Forces services, so I sent my defense to the honorable judge with COIAC, but I won the case because my wife, she said that my husband is overseas for serving U.S. Armed Forces for technical support, and the lawyer, the other lawyer, he looked into all Department of Defense. They said, we did not see your husband's in there, so we got the case. I sent that, my wife sent the report to judge, he dismissed the case. So that's another case, without attorney. So that transferred to Las Vegas, and some lawyers, they wanted to make change, you know, they want to take some money out of it. I did not even bother send them, you know, for Honorable Judge Joanna Kushner, I sent my defense and was gone. Okay, now I have a question for you, ladies and gentlemen. We know that police officers are protecting us, serving and protecting us. But there are some people, they call them First Amendment audit. They're insulting police, saying bad words. Are you gonna defend those bad guys insulting our protectors or not? Thank you so much.
I think you gotta ask a different lawyer that. Well, I can tell you that question I think is more of a criminal lawyer, whether it's like a criminal defense lawyer or prosecutor. But I can tell you, usually the criminal defense lawyers will take anybody.
So you cannot defend it.
Yes. Some of my friends are criminal defense lawyers and they tell me the stories about their clients. I'm like, how do you even defend these people? I mean, he says the same things I defend insurance companies.
Thank you so much.
All right.